Carl Jung spent his entire life studying what people hide. Not just their secrets, but their shadows. Those deep, dark parts of themselves. They've buried so completely, they don't even recognize them anymore. And what he discovered was terrifying. The most dangerous people in your life aren't the ones who hurt you openly. They're not the loud ones, the angry ones, the obviously cruel ones. No, the real threats are the ones who've learned to disguise their darkness behind beautiful masks. Masks of kindness, of wisdom, even of love. They don't break you with cruelty. They dissolve you, slowly, from the inside out. Like poison in your favorite drink. Like rust on iron. Like termites in the foundation of your soul. And here's the hardest truth. If you don't learn to recognize these people, you'll keep giving them exactly what they want. Your trust, your energy, your attention, your love. You'll keep giving pieces of yourself to someone who was never safe to begin with. Because the greatest trick the shadow plays isn't hiding in the darkness, it's disguising itself as light.
1. The chronic victim. Jung called this the eternal child archetype, the person who refuses to grow up. They're always suffering, always wronged, always the exception to responsibility. On the surface, they seem fragile. But Jung saw the truth. Chronic victims are masters of emotional alchemy. They turn pain into power, sympathy into control. You think you're helping them? You're feeding their shadow. Because here's the Jungian truth they'll never admit. They don't want to heal. Healing would mean losing their greatest weapon, your pity. They've merged with their shadow so completely, they no longer see themselves as manipulators. To them, their victimhood is sacred. And if you dare question it, you become the villain in their story. Jung warned, nothing is more repulsive than a furtively grasping hand. These people don't just take your energy. They rewrite your reality until you feel guilty for their suffering. And the moment you try to leave, they'll collapse, cry, or accuse you of abandonment, proving they were the victim all along. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people don't want to be saved. They want to be worshipped for their pain. 2. The charming mirror. Jung's greatest discovery was the persona, the mask we wear to fit in. But this person, they don't just wear a mask, they've become one. At first, they seem perfect, laughing at your jokes, validating your insecurities, reflecting back exactly what you want to see. But that's the danger, Jung wrote. When the persona takes over, the real self withers. You'll search for depth in them and find only echoes. They don't love you. They love how you make them feel about themselves. And the moment you stop feeding their illusion, they'll vanish, or worse, turn on you. Because here's the Jungian red flag. If someone never disagrees with you, never challenges you, never shows you their shadow, they're not trustworthy. They're empty. And they'll drain you trying to fill the void where their soul should be. Ever met someone who gets you instantly? Congrats. You've just met a psychological chameleon. 3. The passive-aggressive enabler. Carl Jung called these people the silent saboteurs. They never attack your dreams outright. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they coat their sabotage in honey. They smile as they plant seeds of doubt, disguising their own fears as concern for you. You're so brave for trying something like that, they'll say, their voice dripping with false admiration. I could never risk failing so publicly. Do you hear it? The poison in those words? It's not encouragement, it's envy wrapped in kindness. They dress their own limitations as wisdom, their hesitation as prudence. And slowly, without you even realizing it, their shadow seeps into your mind. You start questioning yourself, mistaking their cowardice for maturity, their hesitation for insight. Jung saw this clearly in his work on projection. When people refuse to face their own fears, their own unlived potential, they project those limitations onto others. They can't bear to see you try what they were too afraid to attempt, so they convince you it's foolish. They don't even realize they're doing it. That's the most dangerous part. They genuinely believe they're helping, that they're protecting you. The shadow's greatest trick isn't hiding, it's convincing people they're virtuous while they quietly destroy the dreams they were too scared to chase themselves. They don't wield knives, they wield worry. They don't forbid you from flying, they just keep reminding you how far the ground is. Jung's warning was simple. Beware the unlived lives of others, because people who haven't dared will resent you for daring. People who settled will try to convince you to settle too. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake their fear for wisdom, their hesitation for guidance. But here's the truth they don't want you to see. Their advice isn't about protecting you, it's about preserving their own ego. If you succeed where they hesitated, it forces them to confront their own regret. And so, without ever raising their voice, without ever saying, "Don't do it," they'll plant just enough doubt to keep you as small as they've chosen to be. Jung's solution? Stop looking for permission from those who never gave themselves the same. Stop mistaking their fear for wisdom. And most of all, stop letting the unlived lives of others dictate the life you choose to live. 4. The secret competitor. Jung wrote extensively about the inferiority complex, that deep, gnawing shame of feeling not enough, of never measuring up no matter what you do. But here's the thing. Some people don't work on theirs. Instead, they compete with yours. They'll praise your success, but then, almost imperceptibly, they'll one-up you. They'll accidentally replicate your ideas, claiming coincidence. They'll celebrate your wins, but only when they're already ahead, only when your victory doesn't threaten their own fragile sense of worth. Jung called this mirror rivalry, a silent, unspoken competition where their shadow can't stand what you reflect back, their own inadequacy, their own unresolved shame. And instead of facing it, instead of doing the hard work of self-reflection, they'll turn your life into an invisible battlefield. You'll feel the tension in their backhanded compliments, the way their praise always carries a subtle sting. You'll notice it in their jokes at your expense, the way they laugh just a little too hard at your missteps. You'll see it in how they disappear when you shine too bright, when your success casts too long a shadow over their own unacknowledged insecurities. Jung's warning was clear. Never trust someone who can't clap when it's not their turn to win. Because if they're competing with you in secret, if they're keeping score in ways you never agreed to, they were never on your team to begin with. So why do you think they're always inspired by you, but never genuinely happy for you? It's because your light exposes their darkness. Your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your joy feels like a mirror held up to their own unhealed wounds. And rather than face them, they'd rather dim your glow. Why do you think they're always inspired by you, but never genuinely happy for you?
5.
The spiritual narcissist. Jung reserved his harshest criticism for those who twist spirituality into a weapon, those who wear enlightenment like armor, using sacred teachings to mask their own unhealed wounds. This is the person who quotes Buddha but weaponizes mindfulness, who preaches detachment but wields it as a way to silence dissent. They call their control boundaries, their judgment discernment, their superiority enlightenment. To Jung, this was the ultimate shadow trap, the ego disguising itself as wisdom, hiding its fragility behind spiritual jargon. You express anger, they dismiss it as low vibration. You disagree, they condescend, you're not healed yet. They've buried their ego under layers of robes, crystals, and carefully curated aphorisms, convincing themselves and manipulating you into believing they've transcended human flaws. But Jung's warning was razor sharp. Spirituality that denies shadow is just ego in drag. These people don't guide you toward truth, they gaslight you into submission. The more you trust their supposed clarity, the more you'll doubt your own intuition, your own emotions, your own right to question. This is the insidious danger of the spiritual narcissist. They don't lead with fear or force. They don't need to. Instead, they whisper love and light while quietly erasing your autonomy. They reframe their manipulation as divine guidance, their demands as soul contracts. They position themselves as the enlightened authority, the one who has done the work, while subtly ensuring you remain beneath them, always striving, never quite awake enough to challenge their supremacy. The most dangerous cult leaders don't scream, they don't need to. They speak in soft tones of higher truth, wrapping control in the language of liberation. They'll quote Rumi while gaslighting you, invoke sacred surrender while demanding obedience. And the moment you resist, the moment you question, they'll cloak their retaliation in spiritual bypassing. You're stuck in ego. You're not vibrating at my level. Jung saw this corruption of spirituality as one of the most toxic forms of narcissism because it weaponizes the very tools meant to free you. It turns growth into hierarchy, wisdom into domination, and healing into a never-ending game where they always hold the winning card. Beware those who claim to be above human struggle. The loudest guru in the room is often the most wounded and the least willing to admit it. The most dangerous cult leaders don't scream. They whisper love and light while erasing your autonomy. 6. The Empathic Controller. Jung's most controversial and perhaps most necessary revelation was this: not all empaths are healers. Some are emotional vampires in disguise. They pride themselves on feeling everything deeply, but what they're really feeling with razor precision are your boundaries. The moment you say no, they crumble into victimhood. The second you express anger, they're triggered, flipping the script so your honesty becomes their trauma. Jung called this projection vampirism, the act of weaponizing sensitivity to avoid accountability. Their shadow is a swirling storm of unhealed chaos, and instead of facing it, they demand the world stabilize it for them. They claim to be highly sensitive, yet their sensitivity only flows one way, toward extracting emotional labor from others. You'll find yourself shrinking, softening your voice, dulling your edges, all to keep them comfortable. You'll mistake their dysfunction for depth, their fragility for wisdom. But here's Jung's brutal truth. A sensitive person who can't hold their own pain will make it yours. Jung's warning was clear: walk away. This isn't love, it's psychological hostage-taking. A true empath builds others up. An emotional vampire needs others to stay small. Real healing requires boundaries, not bottomless tolerance for dysfunction. So if you find yourself constantly managing someone else's emotions while yours go unheard, recognize the truth. You're not their sanctuary, you're their supply, and no amount of your shrinking will ever fill the void they refuse to face. The Jungian solution. Jung didn't expose these psychological patterns to make you paranoid or distrust everyone around you. He revealed them to wake you up, to pull you out of the trance of self-betrayal. Because here's the hardest truth you'll ever face. You don't attract toxic people, you tolerate them. And every single time you silence your intuition, abandon your boundaries, or shrink your truth to keep the peace, you roll out the red carpet for them. You teach them exactly how much they can take from you. Jung's antidote wasn't avoidance or blame, it was shadow work. The radical act of facing what you've repressed, your anger, your instincts, your unmet needs, your right to say no without apology. When you integrate these disowned parts of yourself, something profound happens. The masks others wear stop fooling you. Manipulative tactics lose their power. Emotional vampires find you indigestible. Not because the world magically changes, but because you do. This is the real alchemy of self-awareness. The more you embrace your own shadows, the anger you've called too much, the boundaries you've labeled selfish, the needs you've dismissed as needy, the less others can weaponize them against you. You stop attracting the same cycles because you're no longer a match for them energetically. The game only works when you're willing to play. So ask yourself now, with ruthless honesty, which shadow have you been ignoring? The part of you that knows when you're being mistreated but stays silent. The voice you quiet because it might rock the boat. The anger you suppress because you've been taught it's unspiritual. That's your power waiting to be reclaimed. Jung's message wasn't about fearing others' darkness, it was about confronting your own. Because when you do, no one can use it against you ever again. The question isn't why does this keep happening to me, it's what part of me is still allowing it. And that is where your freedom begins. Now ask yourself, which shadow have you been ignoring?